The one thing that I think is important to know about the education system in America, especially private versus public, is the idea of, and you probably all heard about this idea of Common Core, and that is for public education system, they are mandated to really stick to those standards, whereas private and other types of school districts, they can have their own standards, set sometimes on a district-wide level or on the school level. But they don't have those, state level standards to have to go by. However, those standards are actually a good thing if they're used appropriately. What happens sometimes is teachers get too rigidly boxed into, just teaching a certain way and just teaching to those standards instead of being more innovative and creative about their lessons. So just to kind of, that's a good thing to, if you're thinking of a public school, to ask about that is something you want to ask about or investigate, how do they stick strictly to these standards, and how do they do that? In private education, even if they don't have to go by specific state mandated standards, they still all have some kind of a curriculum plan and the goals, overall goals that they're aiming for. So that's a good thing to ask about. In terms of teaching, we set educational goals from the we backwards design. We set from the end back. So what do we want the students to learn, and by what time, in their, or by what grade level should they be learning it? And of course, the thing to remember about that is that's what the standards kind of try to address. But the thing to remember about that is every student is individual. Every student has, progresses at their own pace. And you can't necessarily, you have to kind of differentiate instruction for the individual student. And that's also very much stressed in the American education system now. Didn't used to be back some time ago, but now it's something that they stress a lot, and teachers are taught very strongly how to, try to teach to the learning levels and learning styles of each student that's in their class. So, so I wanted to kind of say that, talk about that a little bit. Yeah, and so like when I plan a unit or a stage, part of a semester, I'm always looking at what do I want the student to end up doing? What do I want them to be able to end up with, what skills? And that's really what I'm aiming for, regardless of how I do that. So whether I'm teaching a certain text in order to, have them acquire these skills, the thing to remember is I'm not teaching the text. Like if I'm teaching a novel, I'm not teaching the novel, I'm teaching skills that I'm using the novel to, to get these students to understand certain things and develop certain skills. It's always really, it's very, effective teachers are basically all skill-based teachers, and they're really teaching specific skills. They're not just teaching a piece of literature, for example. So if I want to teach, for example, about irony or satire, I'm going to choose, a piece of literature that embodies that and use that to teach that piece of literature. But I'm not just working on that piece of literature itself. So from a, I don't want to get too far off the field here as far as the difference between American education system and what makes that unique. But I do agree with what was said before about teachers that go through the public education system in general are really strongly, highly dedicated to education. And, unfortunately, you don't want to say, well, they don't make enough money and that's why, but it is true that, teachers are not generally in education for the money. I don't know a single teacher that says I went into education to make good money, because, you're lucky if you do, but you go into it because you love teaching. And so, and you love, interacting with your students and seeing them learn. Okay.
Yeah, I cannot agree with. Yeah, I cannot agree with you more, Laurie. Nobody coming into the educational field to make money. We came here because we want to shape the future. We want to make impact on the younger generation, right? We have the passion about education. And it's so true that private school and public school, no matter what type of school it is, and they all have different kind of teachers. And as long as they can, using backward design, differentiate instruction to meet diverse students' needs, and I mean, your kids can bloom from there. And the most important thing is to know where they are and how we can support them. Of course, looking at the whole K-12 education, here in the United States at the elementary school level, the core curriculum, the common core, Laurie just mentioned, the common core curriculum most public school using is a little slower. And when it comes to middle school, it's getting heavier, and high school is even heavier. And they pack most of the stuff into college. And that may explain why the high drop-off rate or low retention rate happening in the freshman year at college, because the way we set up our curriculum. So private schools see the opportunity, they start packing things up in elementary school. We cannot say it's right or wrong, but there's definitely a way that you can help them meet up the academic goals, but also helping them develop all those what we call transferable skills that they may use in their future life as a lifelong learner. Exactly what Laurie just said. You teach a novel, it's not just novel, it's a transferable skill that you can use into other articles into your future life.